Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm Fahima Mohammed, your host and your relationship coach. A very warm welcome from all of us here on British Muslim TV to all of you, wherever you're viewing from, whether it's live on Sky Channel 752 or streaming on Facebook or Twitter. We love to hear your voices and for you to also join us in the conversation tonight. And you can do so by calling in directly on 01924231083. Do ask the bill payer's permission as standard network rates do apply. And we will also take your sort of messages for free via our WhatsApp call, which is 07585835150. And you can remain anonymous if you wish to do so. But I'd love to hear some of your stories, your comments, any questions that you have for me and my guest tonight, as we're going to be talking about from split to spiritual growth, post-divorce Odyssey. And with us tonight on this amazing topic, we have a lovely guest with me, Dr. Reza John Bidadi. Salaam alaikum, Doctor. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, I'm well. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to British Muslim TV and for joining us here tonight. I know how busy you are. And again, congratulations on your PhD. I'd love to hear more about yourself, your work, before we go on to the topic, please.
Inshallah, jazakallah. My PhD was on identity and representation, especially in Hollywood films. And I looked at 4 countries. I looked at Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, and Palestine, and how these countries and the identity, the people from these countries are represented in Hollywood films. And I looked at the period of 40 years, and it was very interesting research. It supported a lot of the stuff that's already done before, that depicts harmful, negative representation, but also highlighted some positive and nuanced representations, things that sometimes we don't see because it's rare in between all the other films. So that was my specific topic of PhD, but I've done my master's in Islamic studies, master's in film production before that. So I for me, engagement of the Islamic identity and media, these are 2 important things that in the last 10 years I've been very close and drawn to.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I invited you here today, because I know you have such a wide spectrum of knowledge, mashallah, and it's such a valuable sort of like information and insight to have today, especially on the topic of relationships. And I know that you have so much insight, and especially bringing Islam and, spirituality into it. And, we don't really have enough academics in the Muslim community that speak, especially about relationships and especially around, when it comes from a male's perspective. And I think we have a lot of women that are vocal out there, but it's really nice to have a man's point of view. And I always try to encourage that, but it's not easy. And I know you talk from a level which is, it's very different to most. And that's what I love about the way, you actually come across because of your studies and learning. So when it comes to from split to spiritual growth, do you think that we are not spiritual enough in order to split? Or do you think that the Islamic teachings is something that, we lack? Or do you think it goes hand in hand? What is the whole idea of this topic at the end of the day? Because at the end of the day, divorce is also something which is allowed.
So it's an important topic because it's starting to impact many people's lives in the Muslim community. It's a major issue within non-Muslim communities, people who live in the UK as we do, or America, or any of these societies. But it's also impacting the Muslim community. I myself have gone through it before. So it's something that's becoming more prevalent. And I think as a society, we need to start looking at it through the Islamic lens, but also through a holistic lens. And inshallah, in this discussion that we're having today, we can kind of address some of the aspects and how some of it affects individuals, the community, the children, the individuals who split up. And we can try to open it up a little bit, break it down, and have a look at the things that we as people from outside can assist in, or if God forbid someone is going through divorce, how they can kind of manage it and deal with it. And also looking at it through the Islamic lens, because we see in modern society, and especially a lot of our information we get from online and social media now, it's normal to watch YouTube and kind of get your news or how you may see some of the world through the programs on there. And so we see a lot of discussion about, masculinity, toxic masculinity, red pill, all of these things that are in a way Islam has already tackled before, but Islam has tackled it from the perspective of Tawheed, from the perspective of everything we do has to be taking us towards God, as opposed to everything we do has to serve me individually. So that's inshallah in the discussion, and I think what you raised about the idea of divorce, and when we start, it's important to say that it's something that is permitted and halal within Islam, but it's the thing that Allah least likes. So just because it's permitted doesn't mean it should be done, but sometimes there's a reason for it and it has to be done. And we have hadith, and one of the hadiths I always remember is that the arsh of Allah shakes when a divorce happens. And so we have to remember that the ramifications of divorce isn't just between two people, or we don't like each other anymore, khalas, that's done. If you have children, so all of those things that inshallah we'll discuss further. And also the ripple effect of it in society, which we will discuss further. But also, we don't want to be setting a precedent that, we get married, doesn't work out, no problem, there's divorce. When you go into marriage, we have to bear in mind that the aim of it is not if it doesn't work out. The aim of it is you make your selection and you're quite specific in your previous selection. So when it comes to saying, yes, I do want to marry you, and the lady says, yes, I'll accept your marriage proposal and so forth, it's with the intention of being it forever. But then, as I said, there are circumstances that are not necessarily anyone's fault. Something happens, which we can discuss as well. And, then divorce arises. So it's that mindset of knowing that it's permitted, but if we can, as a society, as a community, help the youth and help others to try and avoid it, that's the best thing possible.
I'm not talking about extreme circumstances here. We're talking about general things in this particular episode. So, obviously, if it comes to extreme circumstances, we do understand that a lot of people get triggered when we do speak. So please do bear that in mind. We're talking about a lot of people that, nowadays, it's toxic when some women, sort of refer to a man telling her what to do and they say it's toxic. So we need to understand that we're talking about things which is every day, and unfortunately it's taken out of context, and we are changing the meaning of a lot of sort of like you mentioned about the Islamic stance on things. So where do you think we're getting it wrong? Why is there such a high rate of divorce in our Muslim community, even though it's, obviously, like you mentioned, it is sometimes there is no other options for it. But I feel like a lot of people are actually using that as a very, very easy way out without having that patience and that sort of way of actually trying to work it out. Do you think there's a lack of, I don't know, counselors or help out there? Or do you think that it's just society? What is it that is actually causing this to make it so easy where people are just, walking away without even much thought or even work to put in?
So I don't think it's just one thing. I don't think it's men or women, one side. It's fair to say that it's equal in measure what's happening. With regards with divorce, I mean, we have, first of all, issues at the moment with marriage at the moment. We have people getting married later and later, yes. Women becoming more successful in their education, more successful, alhamdulillah, in their work and careers. However, it's starting to impact the fact that they decide to get involved into a permanent relationship and marriage and so forth, because they want to finish their education and start a career, get onto the ladder, maybe progress a little bit and say, okay, now I want to, have children. But by then they may be in their late 20s, and it takes a few years.
That. Sorry to sort of interrupt you, because I understand that, when you say that a lot of women are taking on careers and that may be a delay. I honestly have seen so many couples that actually have studied, and even, while they're studying, have taken on and are quite willing to have that relationship. So, when we say that women are educating themselves, they're not necessarily waiting until that education finishes. And even if you were to even go into university, you are still like, before your mid-30s when you finish. But it's now where I'm seeing women, in their mid-30s that are still not married. So it's not even education. It's not even that career. There must be something else, because we don't want to stop that either. Because when there are times that, when, the thing doesn't work out, and a lot of people always represent this whole idea that women want to have careers, so that's what's delaying them. No, it's not that. I know that's not what you're saying either, but we need to also clarify that at the end of the day, that also helps her through any situation to help within the marriage, as well as if their things do not work out, because it's a lot harder for her to maintain. So I want to sort of say, is there other things that may sort of, delay marriages? Could it be the sort of fear of divorce? Or could it be that some people are just not committing?
So I'll extend with what you said, because you extended what I was saying. So yeah, as women do progress in their careers more than they were in, like, previous generations. Some of them do it because, like you said, if they do ever go through divorce and they've seen that there's no backup system for them, what do they do? Who do they rely on? So it's a form of having a safety net in case marriage doesn't work out, or for whatever reason they have themselves to rely on. So that, in a sense, may be community's fault for not providing a safety net for the women that went through divorce, or it could be that we live in a society where women are encouraged to be empowered through their means of education and so forth, and also family units are not as encouraging as much. No matter how much we say that as a male and female living in a Western society, we have our own standards. We do get impacted as a community by what goes around, what we see around through social media and university and so forth and so on. But then on the other hand, we may have men who are not kind of stepping up to the plate, where we do have, for example, my wife, most of her friends are dentists, doctors, and GPs. However, they're finding it hard to find someone on their own level. The fact that they have studied and they become independent and they're a little bit, they're in a little bit older, the person who's maybe a similar age to them will want to marry someone younger. So then we have that problem, right? So it's not anyone's fault, but there are dynamics, there are symptoms that we can see, and maybe there are ways as a community we can address it, discuss it, open it up so it's not. And some of the friends who were not able to marry someone who was, let's say, similar educational level in that sense, but when they look, what is the purpose of my marriage? Is the purpose of my marriage to complete my religion, or is it someone who's gonna financially make me wealthy or comfortable and so forth and so on? Now, having said that, I don't mean that someone who comes from a specific social background, the Holy Prophet said, take that into consideration. However, what I'm saying is that if you see you're doing something and it's not working, maybe you need to look at it from a new angle.
I'm so sorry, Dr. Reza. I'm going to have to stop you there, as we are going to be coming on to a very short break in a few moments, and we're going to continue. And when we do, as we are getting straight and very deep into this conversation, and it's so interesting, please make sure you stay with me, and inshallah, we will continue in a few moments. Don't go away. We have so much more to discuss, and I'm looking forward to the next part. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm really, really happy to have this conversation with our guest tonight, and we went into so much in the very beginning. If you actually have missed part of it, please do go back and rewind. But just to quickly recap, we were talking about, the reasons why divorce happen, and at the end of the day, the multifaceted sort of, areas in which it can affect somebody. So it's not just one reason, as we do speak about these things. And I know a lot of you will listen and get triggered, or even have your own sort of opinion and experiences, which of course we are all right, because again, there are many reasons for this, but it's just good to speak about it in order for us to understand, does it really, affect and reflect what we are going through? And inshallah, we can hopefully overcome some of the challenges and adversities that does come within relationships. Now, Dr. Raza, when we were talking about, obviously the reasons for it, now, unfortunately, we go to the next section as in, okay, now this happens, we have no choice sometimes, or it is a choice and that's the best choice that in that moment that we choose. And especially when it comes to families with children, there's so many reasons to stay, but at the same time, there's so many reasons where people say when two people are not happy, then how are the children going to be happy? I mean, it's really difficult, and I know it's a case-by-case situation. So what is your thoughts on that? And, how does someone get through that sort of like emotional stages after divorce? Because it's you, it's your partner, it's you even seeing your ex all the time when you have to see them with the children. How do you manage the children? There's lots to discuss there. It's not just about you anymore, even unfortunately, to deal with yourself. It's really family as well.
So I want us to discuss the aspect of emotional healing and kind of processing divorce from three perspectives. First perspective being within the community, what is the community's responsibility? How can the community assist people who are going through really turmoil and difficult time of their life? Two, how the family can assist, and friends, family and friends who are close. And thirdly, I think individual, how they can process this very difficult time. As a community, one thing we can do, which is the simplest thing, is not to backbite. So if we see someone's going through it, because we don't know what goes into people's lives, right? We don't know what goes behind closed doors. And it's not our business to know, and it's not for us to interrogate or hearsay or backbite, God forbid, even slander. Because backbiting within Islam, ghaiba, is the truth. You stating the truth that will make someone look bad, but slander, tawheen, is you invent a lie, which is even worse. So I think the first thing we can do is when we see someone within the community and they're going through this difficult stage in their life, first thing we should do is not create any extra discussion about, oh, I think this happened, I think that happened, even if it's in a kind of like a jokey way with someone that you know, because you don't know what that person will take and think, oh, it's serious, and then pass on. I've seen it within community where someone said, this person, this. I said, where did you get this information from? Oh, this lady told me. I said, how does she know this? It's impossible for her to know. So first thing to do is let's not
sorry
backbite.
to disrupt you again. I just wanted to pick up on something that you said, because when you mentioned community, and now that you just brought up that example, it's funny that you meant that lady said, because I think with men, they're a little bit held back. And I am generalizing here, because I know both.
I don't mean men don't say it. I just let it because that was the last example that came to my mind.
I'm actually saying that men, I've noticed, are a little bit more careful when it comes to divorce, and they tend not to speak about it as much, from my own sort of surroundings, from what I've witnessed. So what you're saying, I've actually picked up on myself, and I think that women more generally will just come up with these things and speak about it, and they might feel more comfortable as well. As men, even if they want to, I feel that they don't have that comfort. And when you talk about community responsibilities and things like that, I don't feel that our communities are really geared up for responsibility, nor are they there for the help, unfortunately, nowadays. It's just there for us to come together. But what is that sense of community that we need to have that I feel, it's just like a herd, but there's no substance.
So so you're right. As we said, the important first thing is not to add fuel to fire, right? So that's the first thing as a community we can do. Second thing, as a community, we can just say that we're there for you in case you need something. A lot of the time when men, women, all of us, both, when they go through divorce, the first thing they're scared of is, what is the community going to say about me? If I go, to the local shop, to the local supermarket, to the mosque, all of these things, what are they going to say? So they don't show their face. So they end up going to the mosque because they fear of what, the community is going to say. If the community just treats them as a normal human being and not make it look like as if they have some kind of a disease or stay away from them or don't look at them, they're human beings. They're going through something that is traumatic. You just don't add to it. So that's the community aspect that, be considerate. How would you like to be treated if, God forbid, you go through it? Do the exact same with other people. Then second thing was family. A lot of the times family either take side, and they always, a lot of the times they take their own child's side. So, the husband's family may take his side, even if it's wrong, or the woman's side if she's wrong, whatever. Taking side, how do we approach this idea of taking side, but also not taking side, but also being supportive to a family member, right? Because that's really important within our religion, to maintain family ties, support family, and so forth. Is we have to be fair with what the situation is. So it's possible for me to speak to my child and say that I believe you made a mistake. I'm here for you as a father. I will support you in the turmoil you're going through divorce, the hardship and emotions and financial situations and so forth. But if I see you're acting out injustice, you're doing something which is outside of the teachings of Islam, I will have to be honest with you. It's my responsibility as a parent, it's my responsibility as a family member or a friend to say, even if a friend approaches me and they're doing something, no matter how close I am to that person, I'll have to say to him, look, I've got your side, I've got your back, but what you're doing to this lady is wrong. How you're treating her is not Islamic, okay? Okay, she might have upset you, she might have done something, but you have to do your taklif. You have to act within Islam. You can't get emotional and you can't do X, Y, and Z. You have to responsibility. And same thing for the sisters, inshallah. They will have friends or family members who again, pour water on the hot situation as opposed to fuel. No, he did that or she did that. Then you do this and you do that. And next, kids are suffering and the community is getting impacted. The ripple effect that we discussed, it just ripples continuously. And then the other aspect is the individual. All of us, when we get married, we make a conscious decision to say, I want to marry this person, and yes or no. When we make those decisions, either we should do it completely knowing what we're doing, or if we don't, it becomes a lesson. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. In the case where it's not successful, and it leads, unfortunately, God forbid for anyone, it leads to divorce, they have to then come away from it healing, and it could take, quite a long time. It's not easy to heal. Because, it could, if it's your first marriage, you put your whole heart into it and, you fantasize about how great marriage is going to be, both men and women, because they've seen it on TV and they've read about it and they thought, this is it, it's going to be amazing. But sometimes you have kids and then the kids are in the middle and the poor kids are suffering while you're trying to sort out your emotions and your right against that person and so forth and so on. And so they have to split their time between a mom and a dad, and they love both. Mom and dad were important to both to the child, so they're stuck in the middle. So how do you, as an individual, process those difficult emotions? And that, I think, goes back to how close is your relationship with God? How close is your relationship with Allah? Because no matter how many good friends you have, when the doors close, everyone's in their own house, and the night comes, and you're alone, it's you and Allah. It's always been us and Allah. From the day we're born, yes, we have our mothers and fathers, but they also pass away. May Allah give them long life. We may get married, may Allah give our partners long life, but they also pass away. But the only person who's there from the beginning, from before you're born until after you're born, is Allah. So this is the best time to build a relationship with Allah. If you didn't have a good relationship, and that doesn't mean, I don't mean just, I pray and I fast, I do all of the wajibat. They have to be done. They have their own place. But the relationship is, how often do you speak to God from the heart? How often do you complain about the difficulties you have in your life to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And you say, Allah, I have all these problems and I want you to help me. I want you to give me guidance. I want you to give me calmness in my heart. I want you to help me. We don't sometimes do that. We may do a little, Allah fix this, and then that's it. Yes. We need to have a stronger relationship. I don't want to be friends with Allah, because that's a really high level. Nabi Ibrahim, he was Khalilullah, he was a friend of Allah. But if we can get to that level of seeing him as a friend, but obviously still our creator, that's a really high level. But anything below that, so the level where I have a good relationship with Allah, and he's with me when I'm really happy, I don't get too happy. I always remember my place. When I'm really sad and the pressures of life are on me, I still bear it, because I know there's something greater than the pressure on my heart, and that's Allah. No matter how much pressure we have, Allah is greater than pressure. So he says, I will test you with what you can bear. So you always have to remind yourself. And sometimes it's very difficult to say that and practice it, because we think, I can say it, but then you have all of these challenges, and for a few seconds you may, forget it, and then you get angry, but then always build that comeback to seconds.
I think it's more than a few seconds, unfortunately, that we do actually forget. And I think in times of pain, the other thing is we either turn to faith or we sometimes turn away from it because of the hurt. So it's really difficult, because I've seen people, unfortunately, that they might actually, it's self-sabotage. And like you said, I know that if you've had a good relationship, it's easy to break, sort of build, or even if you haven't had a relationship and you are guided in that way. So what would it be then to actually, regardless of how you started, but after divorce, to actually lead you to not losing faith? Because that is one thing I do find a lot of people struggle with when it comes to adversity, that they do tend to not turn towards their creator. And if they do, like you mentioned before, it's more about the complaining and why me? And at the end of the day, it's, I've had enough. And something like divorce, it's like, a lot of the times it seems like it's betrayal, it's broken hearts. And that is, even psychologists say it's the same as, feeling the pain of broken bones. Like you said, there's so much investment in there. And yes, maybe, one person wanted it more or less than the other, but regardless, I find that it's very, very hard for people to get past that initial stages of feeling this is now, a lesson, and this is something now I have to just accept. So that's what we're going to discuss as we are coming into another break very shortly, because I think that we do need to ponder on this, because I know that period is the most crucial time where it will actually lead down a road of further destruction, or it can make you a lot quicker to heal and actually accept your situation to move on to the next, sort of relationship or stage in your life. And if you are entering a new relationship, then inshallah, you're not going to be carrying that baggage, because you will have that within you. So when we do come back, inshallah, Dr. Reza is going to, enlighten us. Please do stay with me as we are going on a very short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm here with Dr. Reza talking about from split to spiritual growth. Now, we had a very interesting conversation just before the break with regards to, turning to our Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in times of adversity and challenges. And a lot of us can do that. But at the other end of it, I do find there is a spectrum where we find individuals at that time, especially when it comes to divorce, a lot of our faith goes out of the window. A lot of our, practices that we do need to follow, it doesn't really go necessarily. We are there to, be like venom, as they do say, love and hate, very, very thin line. And I notice when it comes to a breakup, you really can see it there. And, unfortunately, very, very unfortunately, people are broken. People are very hurt, and they may not have that right way of thinking. There's, blame. There is a lot of shaming for themselves or the other person, regardless of the situation, because it's not a nice thing. Even if you choose it, it is not a nice sort of stage to go through. So what would you advise people, especially when they're at the very beginning stages of divorce? How could they pick themselves up, even in those really, really harsh times, in order to turn towards our Creator, to find that solace, to find that peace? Because believe me, it is the only answer to get to the next stage. So what would be some of the practical tips that you can share with us, Dr. Reza?
So I look at marriage, as I said at the beginning, it's a means of getting closer to Allah. So that's the most important aspect of marriage. Yes, to have children and so forth, but the most important aspect of it is a means of getting closer to Allah. And so, unfortunately, what happens to us is we forget that aspect when it comes to separation, divorce, and God forbid, when it comes to divorce. And so we forget that the whole point of it was getting closer to Allah. It doesn't end when you decide to have divorce. That's still a means for you to get closer to Allah. So how practically, you ask, fair question, have faith, so forth. How do I practically apply means of getting closer to Allah if I'm going, God forbid, through separation and divorce? If you ultimately decide you're going to divorce and separate, then the first thing you have to do is put your ego aside. If you remember, the first sin that ever occurred in history was Shaitan, Iblis, his ego preventing him from doing sujood in front of Adam. That was the first sin that ever happened. And so that's why it's the root of every single sin that has become after that. Adam's sons killing, one of them killing the other, so forth and so on, all the other sins that have taken place. And so when ego comes in and Tawheed comes out of your equation in divorce, that's when problems arise, not only for the other person, but for yourself. Because you'll never be happy if ego is driving your intention. You will never be satisfied if ego is the main driver of every action that you take place. However, as in marriage, if you do stuff fi sabilillah, if you marry fi sabilillah, if your partner makes a mistake, but you're saying they're a believer, they love Allah, I am in the right, they're in the wrong, but for the sake of Allah, I will be flexible. I will humble myself because I know Allah will reward me. And then Allah will reward you. He will elevate you and he will make you more successful. Same thing applies in divorce. If you're going, God forbid, through divorce and you see hardship and there's discussion maybe about the financial situation, if there's discussion about the children, if there's discussion about possessions and so forth and so on, taking guilt and it was that person and this person, step back and say, I'm a Muslim. I follow the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet. I aim to get close to Allah. What can I do in this divorce that will make my God happy with me? That will make Allah happy with me? What can I do in this process? What's my taklif, other than the fact that why should she have the house, or why should he have the car, or why should he? No. How can I go about where ultimately I come out closer to Allah? And this doesn't mean that I'm not trying to say man or woman should allow to be abused, their rights to be abused. But sometimes our rights are not being abused. What's happening is we want to assert ourselves for the last final part of this act, this chapter that is with this person, that I'm in charge, I'm the one with power, I'm with authority, and you are not, and you don't have the ability to do that. So if we take the ego out of the equation and look at Islam's teachings within this matter, what's my responsibilities? What's my taklif? How can I make Allah happy in this situation? Even if I have to forgo some things, but I'm pretty sure this way Allah will be happy with me. Sometimes that's what you have to do. And by doing that, I guarantee you that discussion we were having about being friends with Allah and close to Allah, that's what happens then. All of a sudden, you feel the presence of Allah in your life. So much so that, divorce is one of the hardest things you're going to go through. If you're able to go through that and you get closer to Allah at the end of it, there isn't much in life that can be thrown at you that you can't utilize the same technique and get through it as well. So that's a practical step. Obviously, there's other things and other ways you can break down this step. But the first step is to put your ego aside and remember Allah in your actions.
No, I know that could be an episode in itself, and so beautifully and so powerful that you have answered that. And it really does put everything into perspective and in a nutshell. And I wish we had more and more speakers like yourself in order to make it so simple for us, because as Muslims, we do forget our identity. We talk about all this modern psychological terms about self-awareness and going within. What does that mean? It actually means exactly what you said. The whole point of marriage, firstly, is to please your Lord. And then, whatever comes after that, even like you said, the divorce, then it makes it so much easier for us to accept that and actually behave and act and make choices in the right way, even for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and have those sacrifices and have the patience. Then it will come to you a lot easier for the next steps. Beautifully, beautifully said. And that's why you're here tonight. So I really do. Anyone's watching, you are struggling, it's going to really help you if you take that on board. It doesn't matter what stage of faith you are. Even if you're starting from the scratch, it doesn't matter. Like we said, it's never too late. And sometimes these things happen in order to wake us up. Now, when we get to the other stage, because like we said, we can actually talk about that for a lot longer, but we've got so much more to get through. Reintegration into single life. We might all think about it as in, yes, we have freedom, but you've been with someone for so many years, there's someone with you, for example, or even if it's a short period, you get attached, not in an unhealthy way, but you get used to somebody. And, we are humans, natural need for connection, and there's absolutely nothing wrong in that. That's the whole idea of us even, having that sort of sanctuary and sanctity of marriage, is because, that's a natural human need. So when we are in our single lives, there might be moments where we might be on a high, but then again, there's the loneliness that kicks in. There's that familiarity that we miss. How do we, again, discover ourselves and establish a new routine in order for us to sort of get to the next stage of, remarrying again without having to carry baggage and doing it in a healthy way with ourselves first?
That's a very good question. That's a very important question, because a lot of people within our community, and to be honest, outside the Muslim community, when they go through divorce, they have a lot of baggage, both men and women, and unfortunately, they try to offload it onto the next person that they decide to marry or even talk to for marriage. And that's why you have all of these horror stories about, I met this person, and all they complained about was, I think the first thing to do is heal yourself before you move on. And the importance of healing yourself is you take accountability for your aspect of what went wrong within the relationship. Because we always say it was the other person's fault, the other person's fault. But if you step back and be honest with yourself the way Allah is honest with you on Yawm al-Qiyamah, you can't make excuses then. Be honest with yourself, look within all that, all the psychological stuff that you're the expert in about looking inside and so forth and so on. And you question yourself honestly and answer yourself honestly. and say, yes, I was responsible for this aspect of it. What lessons can I learn? Was I harsh in this aspect? Did I allow growth to for that person in this aspect? Was I controlling? Was I abusive? Was I not necessarily physical, but maybe verbal, mental? Did I respect the other person's parents when they were in front of me? So forth and so on. What lessons can I take from that? And how can I better myself from these lessons that I'm learning, apply it to my life, and then look for someone. So when I'm ready to get married, I don't need to learn the lessons and teach myself then, because then it's difficult. We have also this issue when young people say, oh, I don't do my salah, but I'll do my salah when I get married. Because no, you do your stuff before you get married, because once you get married, that's when the test comes in. You don't become a better person after marriage. Allah says, I complete one half of your deen. The other half is your responsibility. That means before that you come in, you need to perfect yourself. Not perfect yourself. Ultimately, you're trying to perfect yourself. And that's the same thing with processing the divorce. How have I healed and progressed from it? Now that I have to some extent, and you maybe need therapy. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing absolutely wrong with therapy. It's a very good thing. Go to professionals, seek their help. They will assist you. We have this taboo within a lot of aspects of our community of not speaking to professionals, psychologists, and so on. You got to do that, right? Going to your uncle or your brother or your friend is good, but they're not professionals. They may see a problem, but they don't know how to diagnose it and help you overcome it. Professionals can. So it's very important that you you heal yourself through these processes. And as you do that, you become a happier person. You become a better person, not just because you want to get married, but for your friends and your family and the ones around you at work. And they see that in you. A lot of people become bitter. You don't want to be the bitter person, because that's a difficult person to find another spouse and get married to. So become a better person and use the mistakes that you made. And if you didn't make a mistake, then analyze the other person's mistake and say what you don't want to have in your next marriage. And so learn the things that you didn't want to have in that marriage, apply it to the next one, and look at those red flags or whatever they are, red lines, and say, I don't want to marry someone who has those because it clearly doesn't work for me, right? So I don't want to try and say it's a good thing, but at least from a bad thing, you get this good result of knowing who you are, develop yourself, and knowing what doesn't work for you, and so avoid that for next time. And then when you do process that and you come to discussing marriage with someone else, don't keep bringing the past up in a negative way and blame other people, because what it does is when you say, oh, is this person's fault, this person just treated horribly, you put people off. They don't want to get married to you. They don't want to get to know you more. But if you do have an honest conversation and you say, look, I got married, I made these mistakes, I was partly responsible, and I've learned my lessons, I guarantee you the other person is going to say, wow, that's a person that I would like to get to know more, because they take accountability. They take responsibility. They learn lessons.
Absolutely. Amazing, Dr. Reza. Again, some really profound, sort of wise words from everything that you've said so far. But we are coming on to our final break in a few moments, and we are going to come back onto the final part. It's done so quickly, I cannot believe it. We've got so much more to get through, but inshallah, we'll come back in a few moments and have so much more to divulge into. But you stay with me again, don't go away. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I cannot believe how fast this episode has gone, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation so far. Inshallah, at least one person that has heard this has got some sort of information that's going to help them, because I certainly have learned a lot tonight, as well as being reminded for a lot of things that we sometimes forget, especially when we are, going through a real challenge and adversity. And, so, wonderfully and wisely, you have put things when I've asked you any questions, Dr. Reza. So I really do appreciate your time. I would love to go so much more deeper into it, but unfortunately, I do want to ask you more questions so that we can actually touch on more points before we end. And the next thing I want to talk about really is children and co-parenting. Again, we can have another whole episode on this by itself, but we just wanted to quickly divulge into the main issues that we need to consider, because I know at the end of the day, we're adults and we're going through our things, but at that age, children, especially if you understand the development and the mindset at that age, no matter what, majority of them are still very young and they're still developing and they are deeply affected. The impact is huge. And sometimes I think parents, even if they're hurting, they do need to sort of put that aside to a certain extent and put their kids first because they did not ask for this and it's not their choice completely. And they are put into a situation where, honestly, they need to be so much more empathy and care from both sides, no matter what. And you really need to tread carefully. And even when couples come to me and I'm like, look, we need to resolve this because I'm doing this for your kids. You two are going to be okay. Trust me, even if you move on to your next relationship. But let's get this sorted because I'm thinking about your children first. So that's my main concern majority of the time when I deal with issues when it comes to family, divorce, separation, or any sort of conflict is thinking about those kids. Now, what would be your sort of first advice or some guidance with regards to children and co-parenting after divorce?
So I want to take it back one step before divorce to pre-marriage. So when you're choosing someone, I always advise if anyone asks me, I want to marry someone, I say to them, marry someone in case, God forbid, you die or you divorce, you're happy with the way they will raise your children. Don't marry someone that if something happens to you and you separate or one of you passes away, you will not be happy the way they're going to raise your children. Don't get married to that person. So that's the first thing. If you come in with that mindset, it's going to make the other aspect of it slightly easier, even though it's not a good process to go through divorce. Now, you're at the stage of divorce, you have 1 or 2 children or 3 children. And as you said, they didn't ask for this. They didn't ask to become into a family where there's going to be divorce and separation and arguments and stuff. They're kids. They just want to be children. They just want to grow up. They just want to go to school. They just want to spend their life learning and observing. And that's what they do. They're sponge. They observe everything around them. So if you are going through divorce, first things to do, as you said, is put the children at the center of the discussion that you're having. What is the best thing for the children? How can we work together to make it easier for them? That's the first thing that has to happen between 2 parents. Don't use your children as a tool to attack the other person, to harm the other person, because the most person you're going to harm is the child. So that's very important that we bear that in mind, that children's welfare and health and mindset should be at the forefront of any discussion between 2 parents who are divorcing. The other aspect is, what's your responsibility towards the child? And when I say that, I mean, fine. So let's say you've had the divorce and you've agreed that you have some days, the other partner, ex-partner has the other days where they're looking after the children or child. Whatever you do, don't disrespect the other person in front of your child or to your child. Because that, you may think you're offloading your anger and your hatred, and it may make you feel slightly nice or better because you've done that. But what it does is it is pouring poison into your child. First of all, you're poisoning your child towards one parent. Second of all, you're poisoning them towards back to yourself. Because as they get older and realize what you were doing, they will resent you as well as being upset with the other parent that they've been, poisoned towards. So the first thing you have to do is not use your child as some kind of a ping ball to try and score a point. Your child is a human being. You have to do your most, even more than when you were married, to try and make sure that they're in a better state as much as you can, whatever your taklif is, right? And also don't try to score points and make yourself feel better by demeaning and disrespecting the other parent. What happened between you two is between you two. What went on and who upset who is between you two. It's nothing to do with the child. Child doesn't need to know any of that. Later on, if they're older, you want to have a sit down and discussion and say, look, according to my view, this is what happened. That's fine. But a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old has, so many problems at school, trying to fit in their identity as a Muslim within a greater society with all the ideological stuff that's going on and everything else. They don't need the extra burden of saying the 2 people that they love the most, the mom and the dad, can't get onto each other. Why are they so angry? Why are they telling me about it? Why they always are telling the other person off? They get confused. So that's, I would say, the most important thing when it comes to co-parenting is to have that. It doesn't mean you can pray. You don't have to go and praise the other person. Obviously, you don't feel comfortable to do that. That's fine. But I even know people who are separated where the woman and the man praise the other person to their children and even to their grandchildren. It's because the other person does have good characteristics.
Yes.
So if you can't do that, that's fine. But don't poison or say negative stuff. Just be mindful of that. And I think that's a very important take. I don't want to give too many takes so people get confused. Just want to say this one thing, that make sure if you're going through divorce, bear the children. And if you have divorced and it's many years after divorce, continue to bear the children in mind as the most important thing. And the second thing is, don't backbite or talk disrespectfully, even if you think it's the truth, behind the other person's back in front of your child. Honestly, it's not going to be good for you or for them.
I think those are really on point and gems that you've just shared there, because literally we need to hear it for what it is, because a lot of us, out of hate and resentment and, whatever it is. And then, the outlay, unfortunately, is the nearest and closest to us, and the most vulnerable is our children, which we may use, again, that sort of term of, using them as a weapon when actually you're just hurting your child. So absolutely correct. And I hope, again, this really homes in to families who are actually going through this, to please do take care of the young minds, because they're the future generation. We want to break generational sort of like cycles and, even the sort of like future trauma. It does not have to be like the psychologists and statistics and studies says, if you put things in place from the beginning. That I can assure you. So now we've coming towards the end, and I want to still address so much, but we're not going to have time. Inshallah, we'll invite you back again in a few months. But for now, I want to sort of say, when we are finding new love in marriage, just generally, how is it that we can explore that prospect? Because it is very, very challenging. Again, we get communities, as much as you say they should be supportive, if anything, they sometimes add fuel to the fire, or sometimes we rush into marriage so quickly, thinking that that's actually part of the healing, just to show that, I got married first, it made me look good, to actually say that I'm actually successful in our marriage. So what's your thoughts on that? I mean, I know we went through a little bit about the healing and then going into it, but what would be the process of finding love again?
I think the process is, again, it sounds simple, but it's difficult to do because how life just confuses us and distracts us. And, as Imam Ali said, life is like a dream and it's an illusion and it's a snake. It charms you, and as you get closer, it will bite you. But it's just, again, going back to how can I find someone, who can I find that will bring me closer to Allah? Yes. And what do they need to have? And what do I need to have going in? So I'll give you an example. If you've gone through divorce and maybe you're not, as a man, you're short-tempered. As a man, you're not practicing your religion on point. So you do some salah here, you don't do some salah there. Occasionally you fast. You never open the Quran. All of these things. But then you want someone who's traditional and religious because you feel like that's what you want and experiences showed you that, that's going to be good for you, so forth. It's unfair for that person for you to even approach to speak to them. You can't expect that person to have all of these good characteristics of iman and akhlaq and character and personality and decency, all of these things. But me as a man, I come in and maybe I have some financial wealth, I've done well in work, business, and I think that's enough. That's not enough. I should go into a marriage, and I use the term man myself because it's easier for me to explain it.
Of course. Yes.
But inshallah, it applies to both men and women. I should go into the next marriage learning the lessons of the past, applying it to my life right now, and demonstrating that now. Being part of the community, being involved in the mosque, supporting it in whichever way I can, financially or my time or my skills or my efforts, being part of the charitable aspects of the community where they're doing good things within the community. These are things where your life shouldn't be just work and I just want to get married. We are responsible for the community that we create, especially in this society where we rely on this community to raise our children as well as ourselves, right? We don't raise them alone. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a community. You need mosque where people are active. Youth are coming. They're getting close to Quran, understanding what the Quran teaches them. And so having that in mindset will help the person who's gone through divorce and said, okay, I'm not going to let divorce make me a better person in life and in marriage. I'm going to learn the lessons and I'm going to apply it. And inshallah, through applying it, Allah will bring to me the person that Allah believes is more suitable for me. that will bring
I
me closer
totally
to
agree
him.
with you there. And you know what? Again, we can go through so much, but we are coming towards the end of the show, and I don't want to leave without sharing some of your sort of like social media or platforms that if anyone wants to reach you, especially with your PhD sort of thesis that you're writing and your work that you do personally, if anyone wants to work with you, get in contact with you, or just you have you as a mentor, or whatever it may be. I just want you to share your details, please, Dr. Reza, and give us some final in the next minute, please.
So yeah, they can reach me on Instagram. I check that the most. There's also Twitter, but I don't check that as much. Instagram, reach me out. If there's anything I can help you with regarding academic understanding of how the academia works, regarding I don't want to say relationship because I'm only applying what I've learned from Islam and from my own experience. I'm not an expert like yourself who
Is your
studied it and so
Instagram
forth.
your name? Is your
But
Instagram
just
your name?
yeah, it just if you type in Reza Jambadadi, I'll come up. Yeah.
And no, honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. Just a final thought before we actually end the show.
Final thought is let's be the community that the Holy Prophet wanted us to be. And inshallah, I think we are able to do that, especially in these really hard times. We can be a guiding a light for the rest of UK.
I love that. Absolutely beautiful. Inshallah, we love to, see how your work progresses, and we bless you for being with us tonight. And we also, wish you well in your actual work that you do. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Reza. Thank you everyone for watching. Inshallah, we will be back. Please do take care. You are tired. Do make sure that you do take care. But inshallah, we'll see you soon. Have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.